A Great Argead Saga ALEXEIN. Volume 1, Telesias, The War Dance. Macaulay. A new episode every single day. Episode 15. Threshold of the Great Ancestor. Part 2. Alexander would depart this mortal realm today, descending into the dark, silent halls of Hades, to take his place beside Amyntas, leaving his younger brothers entirely exposed to the wolves. Philip felt the shiver run down his spine, utterly detached from the oppressive heat of the sun. He looked at the massive 20-foot frame of the pyre, waiting to swallow his eldest brother into its belly. 2 years ago, he had been a child, weeping in the shadow of a king. Today, he watched the scene with the clinical, unblinking eyes of an apex predator. He didn't see an inevitable tragedy. He saw a mathematical equation of power written in blood. He leaned slightly toward his trembling brother, his voice catching that low, freezing friction of an absolute pragmatist. "Our father and our brother will sit together in the Council of Shadows by sunset, Perdiccas," Philip whispered, his jaw locked tight as he tracked Ptolemy's armored back ahead of them. "But they will be watching us from the dirt. Do not let them see you stumble. Let them see that the blood of Amyntas still has teeth." Perdiccas released a sharp, clipped breath, forcing his eyes away from the terrifying memory of his father's pyre and upward toward the blinding, unforgiving sky. The silence of the hills was absolute. Even the beating of birds' wings had died away, stifled by the heavy, suffocating scent of unlit resin and myrrh. The only sound was the dull, earth-shaking thud of shields struck by the noble companions. To avoid the ultimate sacrilege of bronze clashing against bronze upon sacred soil, their shields had been meticulously wrapped in thick black leather. The muffled thumping sounded like a slow, dying heartbeat echoing through the valley. "Look at them," Ptolemy laughed, sons of filthy peasants lining the dirt embankments, their faces blackened with ash in mock mourning. "They weep for a king they never met, Philip, while secretly praying the new one will lower the price of winter grain. Do you see the reality of the crown? Loyalty is nothing but a coin. You either spend it with your own hand to buy an army, or you are spent by it." Philip stopped walking for a fraction of a second, staring straight up into the usurper's arrogant glare. "My father taught me that loyalty is a debt of blood, Ptolemy," Philip said, his voice catching the low, freezing friction of a prince who was already tracking his targets. "And in Macedonia, debts are always settled. One day. Without fail." Ptolemy's public smile grew razor-thin, laced with a sudden lethal malice that fractured his mask of grief. "A clever boy. I hope your wrestling skills match your maxims, Prince. At tomorrow's funeral games, it is your raw flesh that will be put to the test before the army. Let us see what your blood is worth then." Behind the regent's horse, Attalus snorted again, eager to win favor back from the silence Antipater had imposed on him. "The boy has an arrogant tongue, Regent. A pity that mere words cannot halt the point of a Macedonian spear when it's driven through a soft chest." Just behind him, Parmenion, a man engineered from clinical severity, maintained an unreadable mathematical mask across his features, monitoring the princes from his horse with detached precision. "Silence, both of you," Parmenion said, his voice flashing a sharp warning at Attalus, though his eyes remained fixed on Philip. "We are crossing the threshold of the great ancestors. Show at least a minimum of piety before the altars." Then Parmenion shifted his cold, calculating gaze down to the 14-year-old prince. The voice of the 32-year-old strategist possessed the chill of absolute logic. "Save your breath for the climb, Prince. The air where kings sleep is exceedingly thin. Many choke on it before they ever reach the summit." They reached the crest of the final ridge. There, outlined against a piercing, brilliant azure sky, a colossal funeral pyre towered like a giant's altar. Built of seasoned pine, cedar, and oak, its formidable 20-foot frame stood waiting to swallow the dead Macedonian king into its belly, to violently transform a brother, a son, and a sovereign into a hollow memory of ash, smoke. It brought the past rushing back with terrifying, suffocating closeness. This wasn't history read from a scroll, it was his own life recurring. Barely 2 years ago, he had stood on this very ridge, watching the smoke of his father Amyntas's pyre stain the sky. Then, he had been a child, shielded by an older brother's shadow. Now that brother was the one on the wood. The reality of death didn't feel like a distant ritual anymore. It felt close enough to touch, a localized infection creeping down his own spine. He realized that tomorrow, the precise moment the torch touched that wood, he would become the only surviving son of Amyntas on this Macedonian soil, who neither wore a crown to shield him, nor possessed an army to protect his throat from the midnight knife. He was entirely exposed. Beside him, Queen Mother Eurydice stared at the monumental mounds, a suffocating wave of bitter regret crashing against her ribs. She had dreaded returning to this sacred earth. For 2 agonizing years since Amyntas's death, she had fought tooth and nail in the treacherous viper's nest of Pella, trying to hold her late husband's fracturing kingdom together. Amyntas had left behind a chaotic court, vulnerable heirs, and a throne encircled by wolves. She had bled her own soul dry to keep Alexander on that throne, plotting in the shadows to secure the Argead crown against usurpers and barbarian kings alike. And for what? To march right back to the foot of Amyntas's tomb, carrying the butchered corpse of his firstborn son. The tragic, cyclical irony of it tasted like ash in her mouth. Standing here so agonizingly close to her husband's resting place, she felt a profound, exhausting guilt for dragging her remaining boys back to the very dirt where their dynasty seemed fated to bleed out. To Amyntas's ghost, she felt she had failed. She had let his kingdom devolve into chaos, and she had let their eldest boy be slaughtered at a festival. But the first queen of Macedonia could not afford the luxury of despair. She forced the grief and regret down into the deepest, coldest vault of her mind, locking it away behind a mask of terrifying matriarchal resolve. "Tonight, we keep watch over the fire," Eurydice said as the gathering darkened her black robes, gripping Philip's wrist with a manic, bruising tenacity that vibrated through her entire frame. Her eyes reflected the first sparks of the altar fires, her mind already fixated on Amyntas's resting place nearby. "And tomorrow, Philip. From within those very flames, we shall find our path out of this trap." To be continued. A Great Argead Saga ALEXEIN. Volume 1, Telesias, the War Dance. A new episode every single day. We are dropping a new episode every day until the epic conclusion of Volume 1. Each chapter delivers a tight, hyper-focused 5 to 15-minute hit of cinematic historical drama, perfect for your daily plunge into antiquity. Watch the cinematic video trailer. Listen to the full saga now. Bookmark Volume 1, Telesias playlist. Subscribe to follow the rise of the Argead dynasty. Thumbs up to help push our vanguard through the algorithm's gauntlet. Comment below.